Hello folks, it's Charlie in Westeros here, and I am back once again with another Game of Thrones / A Song of Ice and Fire discussion video. And today what I want to do is I want to discuss, or really review, the recently released book, A World of Ice and Fire by George R. Martin and Elio Garcia and Linda Antonsson, which is basically a kind of dictionary or encyclopedia, or really a world history book of the universe in which A Song of Ice and Fire and Game of Thrones is set in. Now, before I get into this review, I just want to say this is a non-spoiler review, so if you haven't watched the show, or if you're all caught up to the show but you haven't read the books, then fear not, because this video does not contain spoilers, which is, yay, thumbs up for that. And of course, if you have read the books and if you've watched the whole show, then you're fine to watch this video as well. So, also, a few more disclaimers I want to get into before I discuss this book in any greater depth is that this this book is basically not the absolute truth when it comes to dictating the world of Ice and Fire, or the world of Westeros and Essos, because George R. Martin nor the two other narrators are the main narrators, or they're not the real storytellers in this book. It's actually written from the perspective of a character living during the time of the events of A Song of Ice and Fire. I'd say around book 5 or so. He's a man, a maester really, by the name of Yandel, and as such, this character's knowledge is still very limited, and certain understandings or impressions of the world could very well later turn out to be completely false, because, this character's knowledge is very limited. So personally, I would say it is very important not to be too orthodox when reading this book and, making sweeping claims about certain things being stated in this book as the absolute truth, because it's written from the perspective of a measly individual in this universe, and therefore it's not the work or not the words of the great god George R. Martin. So keep that in mind when you are reading this book and when you hear me discuss this book as well. So just to give an overview of this book, the book sort of reads like a chronicler, of course, Maester Yandel, detailing the events of the past and the present in this fictive universe. If you've read maybe The Princess and the Queen and or The Rogue Prince, which are two novellas written by George R. R. Martin, then you're going to find that the style of those short stories and this book are pretty similar, considering it isn't like an active character or many active characters discussing or talking about their personal adventures in Westeros or Essos, but it's rather, somebody presenting a series of facts in a relatively linear fashion. So it's not quite as exciting as many of these, as the 5 books that have come out so far for A Song of Ice and Fire. So just keep that in mind. Now, in terms of what the book does teach us, I think there's quite a few cool things about it. For one, you definitely learn some very cool information about, the civilizations we've never really heard about in the book series, Song of Ice and Fire, especially those that are far removed from Westeros, which is, pretty sweet. However, the information on those regions specifically are much more limited compared to the information surrounding, Westeros, since, the fictional storyteller in The World of Ice and Fire is based in Westeros, and it's only natural that he won't know that much about the Far East or the Far South. Nevertheless, some of the things we learn about these, far out cultures are pretty mind-boggling, because we learn just, how different they really are from the lands or the Seven Kingdoms of Westeros, including actually a few matriarchal style societies, which is what I would call them anyway, but they're pretty unique. So I don't want to spoil anything there, but yeah, definitely some cool new communities or kingdoms that exist far in the east, which I would think honestly are kind of much more interesting than Westeros and the Seven Kingdoms, but that's just me. Now, focusing back on Westeros itself, you do learn a tremendous amount about the history of the 7 main houses in Westeros, and of course their predecessors who ruled the land of the 7 kingdoms. There is a lot of very interesting information about how these various kingdoms sort of grew, expanded, and in some cases collapsed throughout history, and honestly, given the very short but interesting tales we learn about these main houses, both, during the time of the First Men and the arrival of the Andals later on, it makes me think that George R. R. Martin could easily write some, brilliant new stories set way before the events of A Song of Ice and Fire that probably we, the readers, would enjoy just as much, if not more, than A Song of Ice and Fire, to be completely honest. But that's just my thoughts. Now, in terms of the minor houses in the book series of Song of Ice and Fire, I would also say that there's equally a significant amount of information given on them in this book, especially the more significant minor houses, like the ones we hear about in A Song of Ice and Fire. Like I said, like the Boltons, the Royces, who live in the Eyrie, the Ironwoods of Dorne, and so on and so forth. I would say that almost all the minor houses we see over and over again in Game of Thrones get a fair level of discussion on them in this book, especially in the north, actually, but still a fair bit in the southern kingdoms as well. Now, obviously, they don't get the same amount of discussion as the major houses, but I think that only makes sense given that the major houses play a much, much larger role in the series, but also in the history of Westeros itself, and especially in the centuries leading up to the events of the Song of Ice and Fire series itself. So it comes to make sense there. I would definitely say I am very happy with the amount of information we gain from both major and minor houses in the book, and I think they're pretty fairly balanced. So 2 thumbs up there for sure. Now, having said all that, I do need to say there was one specific period of time or group in this period of time that receives the most attention in this book. And it only makes sense since, this specific group has played such a humongous role in quote-unquote modern Westerosian society or history. And of course, I'm talking about the Targaryens and their episode of holding control over Westeros. Excuse me. This specific portion is incredibly fleshed out in the book, and I think we get a range of perspectives detailing very significant events that transpired during their dynasty's rulership, which I particularly enjoyed reading as a Daenerys and Targaryen fan. So if you are also a Targ fan, then you will absolutely love this book for learning much more about them, their family history, and their 300-year stay in Westeros. So, yeah. Now, what could the book have improved upon? What is it missing? What was I hoping for in it? Well, there are a few things. Again, because little is known of the ancient history of the earliest era of Westeros, or the world's history in general even, the Maester narrator of the book gives us, he gives us very little new information or even anything that we don't already know about the earliest events in the history. So I do think this was done for a couple reasons, however. The first being the obvious issue that there's a lack of, primary source documents that exist, or that even ever existed for that matter, to inform this narrator. But I also think, personally, this is just my hunch, that the second more significant reason is the fact that George R. R. Martin wants to keep that information hidden for now until the last 2 books come out, because, I think these early eras in this early timeline in Westeros is pretty significant for events that will transpire, and I think a few other Game of Thrones reviewers would agree with me on that, but nevertheless, there are a couple of very minor new tidbits of information that are released in this book, or that we can at least, gauge from the book anyway, which is sort of cool, but, well, I'll leave it at that. So, again, even though the early history sections even though the very early history section does talk about, the White Walkers, the Children of the Forest, and the arrival of the First Men, a lot of information we pretty much already know is kind of out there even before the book came out, so, it is what it is. The second possible issue with the book is that it is very different from the way A Song of Ice and Fire is written, since, it reads much more similarly to your high school history textbook, maybe. More so than a fantasy novel, at least, because for all intents and purposes, it kind of is a history novel, or it is a history book, just, Westerosi style. So if you were or are a history buff, and of course if you love Game of Thrones along with those other aforementioned interests, then you will probably really enjoy the book, because its writing style is fairly, matter of fact, very clear and cut, bam, 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 generally speaking. There is very little in terms of, a single linear epic storyline going on, but rather many different small tidbits or chunks of information that are revealed or released, and they're kind of strung along various regions and time periods, so you're kind of jumping all over the place. So, you won't exactly have the same kind of suspense that comes with getting, strongly attached to a character or many complex characters, or worrying about them dying and then, witnessing their sex scenes, for lack of better words. So, yeah, I guess that's the downside of this book, if I consider there is any. And that again actually makes me want to remind you that if you have only watched the show Game of Thrones, or even if you are just starting the show right now, this book is completely fine to read, since there are no spoilers in it from the series itself, except for the epilogue at the very end. So, if you're just starting the show, or if you're starting to read the books, or if you're all caught up to season 4 or whatever, this book is totally safe for you. You can read it and not worry about any information being spoiled, because anything that happens in the TV show or book series kind of happens right after this tome is written, minus, of course, the fact that there's an epilogue written, which kind of explains what has been going on from book 1 to 5, because, it takes time writing works of history in medieval Westeros, so you can understand. Anyway, that is basically all I have to say on this specific book. I know there are quite a few other reviews for The World of Ice and Fire out there. I know another fellow YouTuber, Bar Porto, made a couple of video reviews on this. Personally, I've avoided looking at other reviews because I don't want to get influenced by them. I just kind of wanted to give my own personal hunches from reading this book off the bat. I have a lot of new theories, new thoughts that have come out after reading this, and more importantly, we, the small council, or me and a few other YouTubers here who love Game of Thrones and A Song of Ice and Fire, we do have a discussion video planned. It'll be live, hopefully. Well, it'll be streaming live, I guess I should say. I will give more information on that fact once me and the other YouTubers have, properly organized a time and a time to do this. And I kind of take the blame for not having being more proactive in that, because I wanted to actually make this video review a while ago. Anyway, long story short, it's been busy, but hopefully I will, try to get things going now, and we will get that video out there so you guys can all enjoy our thoughts on, what kind of information there really is, the nitty-gritty that is in this book. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. Anything else I have to say? Oh, yeah, actually, I have one small announcement. I'm not going to do this just yet, but I am pretty, well, I have to say I'm pretty big on Instagram. Like, I love Instagram, taking pictures and all that good stuff. And I'm getting close to having 1,000 followers. Yay, kind of cool. But what I want to do is I want to have, like, a giveaway, I guess, because I hear they're, fun and interactive and whatnot. So basically what happens is last Christmas I got this lovely toque. The problem was my sister also got me one, which I always wear at wintertime. But I have an extra Game of Thrones Targaryen toque here, so excuse me. So I'm going to announce a contest in the upcoming few days or weeks, so stay tuned for that. But I will announce it here on my YouTube channel and in my Instagram account. So if you want to check out my Instagram account, it's in the info section below, instagram.com/CharlieInWesteros, or just look up Charlie in Westeros, same name as my YouTube channel, really. So yeah, just stay tuned for that, and stay tuned for more information relating to a bigger, more complex discussion of the book, The World of Ice and Fire. So that's all for now, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thumbs up, subscribe, like, and all that good stuff if you did. And I will see you all very, very soon. Take care. Bye.